for a minute.
Yeah, I was like, and then I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. And before I knew it was over, it was sad.
This is crazy. This is so nuts.
I'm Letitia Ferrer,
And I'm Chris Alexander.
and this is Totality Talks, the solar eclipse
It
podcast.
just took my breath away, the whole thing. It's really cool that you can see the corona and you see the sun kind of spewing out from behind the moon. It literally took our breath.
Welcome back to Totality Talks. In this episode, we have Planet Earth's eclipse weather expert, Jay Anderson. Today we chat eclipse weather, hear stories of eclipse weather past, and discuss the approaching event. Here we go. All right, we're hot.
All right. Yay. It's working right. Hi, everyone. I'm Letitia Ferrer, and with us today is Jay Anderson, the Eclipsophile, the eclipse weatherman. This is the man that for all the eclipses, he puts out a cloud cover report as to what are your chances to seeing the eclipse. He has these great charts and graphs. It's key to helping me plan my eclipses. I actually did some AI stuff today about future eclipses and everywhere else and locations and everything else. And it referenced Jay's site where I should go see my eclipses for the next 50 years. Until 2065 for me.
Yeah. Welcome back. This is your second time that you've been
Yes.
with us. You had a great chat in 24. So welcome back, and can't wait to talk about what we have in store for this eclipse coming up in less than a month. So,
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
So we'll ask go ahead and just do some of the summary stuff of how many eclipses now have you seen? And
Oh,
when did you start doing the weather for us? And where are you going in Spain? Those are three questions there. Or
Well,
Spain or wherever for this
I
one.
think I'm up at 25 totals now and 10 annular. So it's 35, pretty close. I think that's the right number, but I didn't count them up before we got online here. So started in 79 when actually here in Winnipeg, eclipse went over top of me. And then about, I guess, 4 months ahead of that, I did a little summary up, mostly for my own use on where might be the best place to go watch it. So I just went through all the weather stations in the neighborhood and looked at their cloud cover statistics, and turned out it didn't matter where I go because they were all pretty much the same when you average them over 10 or 15 years. So it was a good eclipse. Weather turned out to be almost perfect, and that was it. We got two things going. It got me going doing these little weather studies, and it got me going eclipses myself.
Awesome. That's wonderful. So 25. Wow, that's a great number.
Yes, it's by no means the most. There's people that are counting up in the 50s, but it certainly gives you a different perspective on an eclipse. The gee whiz factor is muted a little bit. It isn't gone, but it's muted a little bit. And you tend to view an eclipse with more of a, let's say, a scientific perspective or an observational perspective. You look for certain things instead of the overall getting swamped with corona prominences, chromosphere, shadow bands, and shadow coming in, shadow going. You tend to focus on one or two things and say, well, I'll watch shadow bands at the next eclipse. Doesn't always work because somebody will come along and shout out shadow bands 30 seconds before totality, and you force yourself to have a look.
You do. You do. Well, you've probably seen. So, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how this path is looking for people
I have
traveling.
a lot of concerns about this path. Although when I looked at today's satellite picture over Spain, it looked like a pretty good day to have an eclipse. We still got a month to go yet. The problems in Spain are mostly the low sun angle of the eclipse itself. You're looking, especially in the end of the track, pretty much down on the horizon. On the other hand, up in Iceland and Greenland, there's a lot more cloud cover to have to contend with. And so finding the spot, particularly in Iceland, is going to probably rely more on luck than on planning. Although if the Icelandic Weather Service happens to have a particularly good forecast of cloud cover that for the next day, those people that are mobile will probably be able to do something about it. It's not like the United States and Canada where there's a road going everywhere. They're pretty limited, and it'll be the same sort of thing in Australia too when it comes along in a couple of years. So mostly what I'm focusing on right now is watching forest fire smoke in Spain, which is a problem. Today it looks pretty clear. Keeping a sort of an eye out for dust storms because they can come roaming in across the Mediterranean from Africa. And again, that seems to be not a problem right now. And then when I'm looking up at Greenland in particular, where the way the satellites work, they're looking at Greenland from over the equator. So Greenland is wrapped around the top of the Earth, and you get a very long slant angle, and it doesn't really show cloud very much. Because I plan to be there myself, I'm looking things over, seeing what I see in the satellite picture, and then waiting until I get a satellite that looks straight down on it and seeing how well I can match up the two satellite images, just preparing for my own change of position if it has to be done.
So, are you a
So
lecturer
these are-
then on a cruise or something? Or-
Yeah, I'll be giving a talk on a cruise boat and looking after weather things, but cruise boats have an ability to move, but they don't move very far very quickly. So you have to rely on computer models of weather forecasts than you do with looking out the sky and saying, hey, sunny over there, let's go there. If that over there is more than 10 or 15 nautical miles away, it's probably out of reach, or you want to ship. So I'm apprehensive about the whole thing because everybody can have problems. On the other hand, it can be completely clear across all of Spain. Iceland can have one of its spectacular sunny days, and Greenland might work out. It's happened before. Been places where I was guaranteed to have sunny skies, and it wasn't. Particularly remembering a Leonid meteor shower I went to Australia to see because it was the sunniest place in the whole world to watch the shower, and I missed the first 20, 40 minutes of darkness, and I lost about 40 minutes of viewing in it. But it worked out in the end.
40 minutes is not bad. 40 minutes of the shower going all night.
Of a
is not
shower,
bad.
yeah. 40 minutes of an eclipse is no
You're dead.
eclipse.
You're dead. Yeah, it's no eclipse. Or only during the partial phases, it's cloudy and then it clears up. That's okay too.
I've seen enough eclipses that cloud doesn't bother me, but what really bothers me is people who are going the first time and being clouded out. It gets me a little bit right here, and I wasn't able to find them a place to watch this thing. And all you can say is, well, there's another one coming.
Yep.
Well, 24.
So what's your-
we had in Texas, it was supposed to be, pretty darn good chances and for clear. And then in Maine, where it was supposed to be socked in, they had that front go through and had crystal clear blue skies for the eclipse.
Yeah, the Texas situation was reasonably easy to see coming.
Yeah.
So people who paid attention to the weather could could find a way out of it. But that's not always the case if you have 100 people in a tour group, and
Yeah.
things like buses were in short supply in Texas because of the number of people and things like that.
So what's your record then on totality versus cloud?
Oh, I hate to talk about that because I'm going to jinx myself, aren't I? I had a look actually because I've done some statistics by looking through the Eclipse Chasers log to see what percentage or frequency of eclipses are clouded out by looking at a bunch of other people's experiences. And I came up with 1 out of 8. You typically, when you average it across all the eclipse chasers, you miss 1 out of 8. Something like, and I'm just running off the top of my head here, but something like 15, the last 15 have all been successful. So I'm due to crap out if you work on laws of averages. So got to work a little harder on this eclipse. Next year's eclipse for almost everybody is a piece of cake as far as clouds concerned. But this year is the challenging one for all of us, I think. And just hope Mother Nature is going to be kind to us all.
So
Yes, I
when we
hope
say-
so too.
Yeah. So when you say piece of cake, well, we do have the, 99% or something crazy that's it's clear, but that 1%, it's not rainstorm. It's the sandstorm. I mean, was that?
Yeah, when you look at the satellite pictures, there's almost always some place that's got sand in the air, but it actually takes quite a bit of sand to really block the sun out. In some respects, if it's fairly light dust storm or just dust that's settling from a previous one, I think your cameras are probably going to have more of a problem than you are watching the eclipse. So it depends on where you are. The main sort of dust source for most of these sandstorms tends to lie over south of Algeria, south of Morocco, in that area, western part of Africa, where there are huge basins of sand in the Sahara that are so willing to blow around. And those are the ones that's in the right kind of winds and send plumes of dust all the way across into the Caribbean and into the southern United States. When you get over into Egypt and Libya, the dust storms are still there. They tend to come from the Saudi side, which is a less frequent occurrence for them. The deserts in Egypt and Libya and that part are fairly stony, so they don't have all this great big piles of deep, deep sand and dust to blow around.
You mentioned forest fires, though, in Spain. I didn't realize there were any right now.
Yeah, they're having on again, off again problems. When I looked at the satellite picture this morning, there wasn't any obvious plumes of smoke that I could see. But of course, it's been in the news recently for Spain and Portugal having some forest fires. They may have a little bit less this year because it's been wetter than it has been in the past, although it's still very dry. But last year and the year before, they traveled into Barcelona from Madrid, and we were actually passing flames on the side of the railway track. And when you look at that, and I get a lot of forest fires where I live right here. There's blowing in from 1,000 kilometers away or so, but the sun disappears when it's still 10 degrees above the horizon sometimes. So it can really get to you. And certainly in past years, there've been times when you looked at those satellite pictures, the whole Spain would be covered in a blanket of smoke. And when you think about, looking at the sun straight up is pretty easy to do, even in smoke. Looking at a sun that's almost on the horizon, through all of this immense amount of smoke, things disappear before they touch the horizon. So forest fires are a man-made thing. Once they start, they have to be brought under control. So if they're there, you could have a problem with them. Weather, on the other hand, is one of those almost semi-random things that can happen to you that Well, that's why I do these weather studies, give you at least a little bit of a step up on the law of averages.
Yeah, because 2017, we had the fires in Oregon, and I was in Oregon. And we got up that morning, and I was with a couple other eclipse chasers, and one of them was just ready to bolt. He was like looking at the man. I've been trying to see where else can I go. He was going to leave. I had to set up in this little camp in a KOA campground. I had to set up a KOA campground, and he was just ready to bolt. And then finally, the high level smoke started disappearing, and it was on time for the eclipse. Before the eclipse, but he was ready to bolt because they were in the morning. That smoke was very a heavy pall over the whole area.
Yeah, the smoke was still there, just dispersed through a great big depth of the atmosphere, so it tended not to be as noticeable. Makes for a lovely pink sun, so
yeah,
maybe if somebody gets us enough smoke, they'll have a pink eclipse. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I'm fairly used to having a pink sun around here in the summer months.
So have there been an evolution of the way that you approach modeling over the years as to as the technology has improved over time? Like, how would you describe that?
The technology's been approved, but the models are still a long way from being totally reliable. The biggest test of a model is storm chasing, and I do a little bit of storm chasing. And you're trying to cement down a position of a particular thunderstorm. You want to be there before it happens. And it's the same sort of challenge that's going to happen in Maine this year. Grow so tall, they have an influence hundreds of kilometers downstream. So if you happen to have one growing even 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers away, it might be high enough to affect your view of the sun.
Yeah.
So in some respects, what I do on the prairies here is sort of what I would be doing if I were going to be in Spain, is trying to predict thunderstorms the way a storm chaser would. Now you can go and get a computer model that'll say, here's where the storms are. And they're good for, this is an area that's going to have thunderstorms, but it's not good for, this is where the storm is going to be. So you can't really avoid them until you see them. When it gets into sort of big scale weather systems, which is the kind of stuff that I'll be dealing with in Iceland and Greenland, the models are better. Big things are better to forecast than small things. But next year, where I'm going to be in Morocco, the challenge is fog, and models are really bad at forecasting fog. One of the biggest problems with using models is deciding which one of the models you want to use. And you look for common elements in maybe 2 or 3 models. And so it gets complicated. It really needs somebody who's looked at the models day after day for 2 months ahead of time, who's chasing an eclipse and saying, well, I have some feeling how this model works, how that model works. And there's a number of nice little tools that have come out from other people in their websites that will actually show you where the clear skies are, how far you have to be away from the cloud that the model is forecasting to be able to see over it. Those could be valuable, but I still keep a pretty jaundiced view on models.
So I was
the
using...
way I overcome. I can find storms when I see the storms. So to me, it's once I see it, I can get to it. But to do that with cloud cover, to see the sun shining on a hillside somewhere and figure out how to get there. And that's a little too late for an eclipse.
Yeah. So what tool, you mentioned the models and the tools. Which apps would you use for that? Because during 2024, I had Windy open, I had Accurate One, I had everything. I had 4 or 5 things open, and nothing was really converging on clear skies anywhere.
I'll use windy, partly because I can get many models in windy. In Iceland, they use their own model, and one presumes that they have it tuned up for their own situation. And Greenland is also forecast out of Denmark, so they have their own model. The only reason I use windy is because it's easy for me to go from looking at a satellite to looking at a model. And there's also features that allow me to look at 5 models in one big spreadsheet right on the screen and move the cursor along and saying all of them are forecasting cloud in this location for that day. So
That's windy?
windy.
Okay, windy. Okay.
I have the paid for version of Windy, but it isn't that Windy's any better because all these companies that give you models are all giving you the same models. So it doesn't matter which one you use. What matters more is what model do you use. And in that you go to as you get closer to the event, you go to the fine resolution models, and they're all marked on them, whether they have a 25 kilometer resolution or a 3 kilometer resolution. In particular with thunderstorms, you want to go down to the small resolution, the fine details that come out, not because you need that so much, but they tend to be able to capture weather systems more accurately when they calculate on smaller little grid points.
Okay.
And so windy, I can just click buttons and pull up these different models and look at them one after the other. But I know of a couple other programs that work as well too. I like to look at the European model, the ECMWF, first, because it's well known throughout the community that for long-range forecasting, it's way ahead of all the others. But I always compare it to the US GFS model as well. They're both fairly coarse resolution models, but they go a long way into the future. So you can go 15 days out, although you'd be not advised to believe it completely. So I just tailor the model as I'm getting closer and closer to the event. If you're 7 days out, there's going to be a mix. You're going to get, some of them say cloudy, some of them say sunny, and some will be in the middle, and you won't have any idea which ones. You just have to wait until they start to come together a little bit. I'm forecasting for some people for the weekend here for an event, and the models only came together yesterday. So Monday to Friday, 4 days out, I'm beginning to see consistency in the model, so I can say to them, your rain's going to end on X morning at about 6 a.m. Now, tomorrow I'll look at that again and I'll see, they're all ending it at 8:30 and they want to start this event at 9. But all still have the rain in them.
Yeah.
We have a saying in the weather office that the models look more like each other than they do of the real weather. That's changing a little bit now. So if you're close in, the next day, the models are pretty good. You can plan, you can drive the next day. 2 days out, you can still plan. 3 days out, you hedge your bets a little bit. And when you get into particularly volatile weather situations like Iceland, where a sunny day across all of Iceland is a rare event, but sunshine in Iceland is not. So you've got all these little clouds that pop up and they last for 30 minutes and they're gone. And how do you deal with it? Well, you just see what the forecast says the day before. Say, I'm going to go there and just take my chances. You're going to get close enough to look at the sky and say, that looks like a good spot over there. You just take it in stages. And it's the same thing with time. You look a week and a half out, you look a week out, you look 3 days out, you say, hey, look, they're all starting to say this. Let's take our chances and go sit there and we'll be a little closer. Or you go to Egypt next year and you don't have a problem.
Well, we're doing that anyway. I just got people coming with me to Spain, and I've picked out 3 sites, and I have us on along a road that I can move. So hopefully I can get clear skies somewhere along the way.
And providing there isn't 13,000 other people driving down that road
That's
too.
true. Well, it's actually a farm to
was
market
storm
and a freeway. It's a farm to market and a freeway. So hopefully one of the two
Okay.
is not going to be backed out.
Spain's a big place. There's a lot of room
I
for
know.
everybody.
Yeah.
But it's 2 years ago, I was storm chasing and I was on a side road trying to get on the main road. And I had a 25-minute wait until the line of other storm chasers opened up enough that I could pull onto that highway. So just multiply storm chasing by eclipse chasing, which is much more focused than it could be a problem moving around. But if you're not on, I don't know whether being on next to the main highway where things flow smoothly or being on a little side road with nobody else, I don't know what works best. I think just make sure there's no big hills, especially forested hills, between you and the eclipse too closely.
We have that. We were
We just
talking.
had the Baselian
Right.
Elements fellows yesterday, and they had the maps of, don't get behind this spot. You will not see the eclipse.
Yeah.
You'll be behind a mountain.
Yeah, I was working with them a little bit on their project. I'm kind of at the stage now where I'm thinking about sort of withdrawing from eclipse chasing, but it's also an appropriate time because AI systems are coming in and other people are coming in that are taking over the stuff I've been doing. I'm almost up to 50 years of this now, so it stands to reason that technology and knowledge and things like AI are going to come along and do everything that I'm doing and probably a lot better. So I'm willing to pass the baton to whoever wants to take it up. I've certainly got eclipse studies done out till 28 and I'm working on 30 now. We'll see when we get there whether it's still necessary that I do this. I rely on the model not being particularly accurate to still need the touch of a human being in it too. But I may be fooling myself on that one.
No, I don't think so. But I'm glad to hear that you were working with those guys to set up the site, because I did notice they have all the cloud maps. They've got the satellite view. They've got a whole ton of information on their site around Spain, because that's where they're going to be. And I thought that was, I'm glad to hear that you've been working with them so that that knowledge has transferred over to the next generation.
Well, I'm pushing them to do what they're doing. They're way better at programming than I am. They're the kind of guys who seem to like to get their fingers deep into this stuff. So more power to them.
They are nerds. They get so deep into it. It's so fascinating. They go to the edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't go to center
Yes.
line. They go to the edge to take a look at
Let me
these
tell you,
eclipses.
if you're going to be an eclipse chaser, once you got the first 5 under your belt, then you start thinking about other little things. So it's got a telescope. It's got a ship the sun's going to be almost on the horizon. And it's a gamble. But I've seen an eclipse that's 1 degree above the horizon. And boy, is that ever spectacular. And
Me too, was
an
like that.
annular eclipse, watching an eclipse rise above the horizon as an annular eclipse is another spectacular thing. So after a while, you kind of have to get your jollies by extending the adventure that you have for this eclipse.
They almost
friend
had
of
me
mine-
convinced for the next hybrid to get right there where it turns in from annularity to totality.
We have a new adventure unlocked.
We have a new adventure on the horizon.
Yeah.
Where the hybrid, just where it turns in from annularity to totality.
You have another complication with that one because there's a lot of debate on just where exactly that point is. The transition is so gradual until the last bead disappears. Well, where exactly is
Exactly
that
are
point?
we?
Because
But you get
if you're 5 meters out, you're not at that magical moment. The best eclipse chase was Glenn Schneider years ago went to watch an annular eclipse that was only visible for 1 second between Iceland and Greenland. And he and some friends chartered a little plane and flew out to it, and they didn't quite get to the point. So they think they saw something that went down to the last bead and then came back out again, so that they just missed by several kilometers in the aircraft the point of totality. And the reason they missed is because it just couldn't be calculated like that precisely. Maybe now it can. That was a few years.
The Stellian Elements guys have got the more accurate model, and they have on their little website, they have all 3 lines and where theirs is versus everyone else's.
Yeah. And somebody else somewhere is sitting down and thinking about, how can I get it even more accurate? Or, the satellites going around the moon are going to give you just a little bit more information about the topography on the limb. Yeah, well, eclipses are adventures, and for some people, the adventure is the calculation, and I guess to some extent for me, it's the weather a bit. But although I'm just as soon do without it and go see the eclipse in a nice clear spot. But for other people, it's the travel, and I know that if we get clouded out in Greenland, it's still going to be a fantastic trip, sailing in the fjords and looking at the terrain and seeing Iceland and things like that along the way. And next year I'll be in Morocco, probably take a couple of side trips and things like that. Maybe take my wife out into the desert, which I've seen in other parts of Africa, but she hasn't yet. So it's kind of to me, an eclipse is travel.
Yes.
Once you've seen, well, it isn't one. I don't know how many. Once you've seen a number of them, you start to say, well, it may not be the greatest weather there. I haven't been there before, so I'm going to go. In Morocco, I've got 10 or 15% chance of being clouded out. I could go 1,000 kilometers down the track and have guaranteed sunny skies and get into Tunisia, for instance. But I want to see Morocco.
Yep.
There's these, I think we were talking to Nick, I believe, Nick James, but for people going on a cruise to Greenland, I hear there are certain types of weather scenarios where the wind can come in over the fjords and blow out the clouds. I'm kind of curious if you can tell us a little bit about that scenario.
Yeah, I'm sort of relying on that. It's just like a chinook in Western United States and Canada. It's as air comes down off of a mountain and drops down, it warms up. And when it warms up, its humidity declines. So basically flushes out cloud. Cloud evaporates. And takes very little descent in the atmosphere to do this, a few hundred meters. And the Greenland ice cap's at 10,000 feet. So it's air coming down off of that is going to warm up as it subsides, just like some of the best chinooks you ever see off the Rocky Mountains. So if the flow is right, if there's no high-level cloud, because the high-level cloud just sails over top, it doesn't come down that much. But if there's low-level cloud, there'll be places where it can flush it out. It's actually pretty detailed. I just recently started taking a look at where this air might come down, because it can come down and get funneled into a narrow channel, in which case it'll build cloud right away again. But if it comes down and spreads out into a little more open spot in the fjord, it clears the cloud out. And there you're dealing with the delicacies of little bits of terrain and things like that. And I've found a few places, I think, that have a little higher probability. I mean, I went through the old satellite pictures 2 days ago just to sort of refresh my memory about what the situation looked like. right about eclipse time and where the cloud cover was. And I found a few places that when everybody else is partly cloudy, they seem to be the ones that have no cloud or very little cloud. And then as far as I could tell, they're related to just exactly what the terrain was, especially upstream from them, but also all around them. So even in those fjords with this descending air, there's still some places better than others. And I get a little anal about these things, partly because people ask me for advice and I have to do it from I've had a look at that and here's what I found type of situation. In some respects, when I quit doing this, I'll suddenly have an awful lot more time on my hand. But what do I do with myself if I wasn't working on this or something else for somebody else?
You should keep working on it.
And Iceland, I haven't looked at very closely in terms of trying to outsmart Icelandic meteorologists. And I've seen nothing on the island that would lead me to say, well, gee, that looks like a really good little spot. Because in Iceland, the cloud can pop up anywhere. There's no, people ask me, where's the best place to go in Iceland? There isn't a best place. You got to play it by ear when you get there. And that's basically what it boils down to.
So that's the way it's going to be on the ground in Spain too. We're going to set the sea when we get there and look at the satellite maps and look at windy and look at everything and plan for the best. Because I'm actually doing a trial setup the day before. And with Spain, I can do the trial setup the day before, have everybody test their equipment and everything else, but it may not be that location the next day.
People have to know that, but
Yeah.
My feeling is if you try your best, people will forgive you for because after all, it's not you in charge of it. The worst thing I could make is taking people someplace that turned out to be worse than the place we left.
Yes.
So far, I haven't done that.
I've made that decision before. I was in Palu in Indonesia, and we were at the hotel, bathrooms and everything else, and we went inland to get away from the clouds. But we saw it kind of peeking in and out of the cloud. It ended up with some dramatic video and stuff because of it, but we would have much rather have stayed at the hotel. It had a clear sky.
We stayed in Palau, and we saw it, but we saw it through clouds too. So don't feel too bad because you really didn't go into much of a worse situation. You just went into a different one.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, it was nice and clear, but that last 15 minutes before the eclipse, that high level cirrus drifted in over top. So it happens.
It does.
But you try your best, and if people see that you're doing that, they'll forgive you. In the end, it isn't your fault. I try not to give too many false hopes, though, because I don't want to be caught out saying guaranteed clear tomorrow and having it turn cloudy. I have hit the other situation where I've said, gee, it looks like we're going to be pretty cloudy tomorrow, and have it flush out and clear off. But these days with global satellite pictures out of Windy or one of the other folks that present that stuff, but there's global satellite pictures. And most of the times where I've been caught out is where I had no satellite imagery. These days, that usually means there's no internet connection where you are. Even that's getting pretty rare where I can't find an internet connection.
Yeah, that's getting pretty rare now. There's the worst one we had for weather was 2005, and we were in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And one of our other eclipse chasers literally had a satellite phone. I have no idea how much it cost him. Just doing line by line by line on the satellite picture. It was like watching 25 baud internet drawing a satellite picture. It was painful to watch, but everybody was like there.
The biggest problem with those is knowing where you are on that satellite picture over the
It's
ocean.
true. It's true.
Windy, at least, will put you where you are if it gets enough of a signal. So you have no idea how much that makes forecasting over the ocean easy. You're in something that's always changing its position. So knowing where you are moment by moment is incredibly valuable. Even in offshore Africa a couple of years back, we're looking at satellite pictures and we see cloud ahead of us, and just being able to say, well, that dot is where I am and there's the cloud and we're moving at this speed and so on and so forth. We could give advice on how to avoid it.
Did you avoid it? Did you avoid it
Yes,
then? Okay.
that was the
But my-
captain that
My
it
ship
boiled
didn't
down to the captain said, well, there's a clear patch. Let's go into it. There's a limit to how much I can do. And sometimes it's the guy in charge up on the bridge who makes the final decision.
So will you have a great relationship with the captain coming up here?
Well, usually, yes. I'm on a National Geographic boat in
Nice.
Iceland, and I believe certainly the captain we had in Antarctica wanted to come to another eclipse. I don't know if it'll be the same one here. I do know that after a total eclipse, the captains are immediately engaged. They want to do it again, and they start talking to tour operators. Well, where's the next one? And would you come with us on it if we set it up, and that sort of thing. So it's a magical experience because for most of them, it's the first one. And if it's successful, and of course, the whole of the ship just goes bananas afterwards with the celebrations and everything. So it's captivating experience, no pun intended, but it catches you and they want to do it again. And if they've done it before, and I've often sailed with captains that have done other eclipses, they're totally willing to compromise and help out.
I remember.
So, were you you said you went to Antarctica. Were you successful last year or in 2021?
Yes, we saw.
You were
That's
the
one
boat that was successful.
Yes, I think we were the only boat
Yeah.
that saw it.
Wow.
And oh boy, you had Jay Anderson there. We were lucky because I'm sitting there on the stern. I'm not watching what's up in front of us. And all of a sudden I look up and there's cloud above us and beautiful blue sky. And I'm thinking to myself, why haven't somebody turned us around? So I went running up to the bridge and I shouted, turn us around, turn us around. Well, I guess it was the first mate. He didn't know who I was. Who the heck's this guy that's coming up saying, turn this ship around? So I went back to the tour representative and said, we have to turn this thing around. Only I was not calm and collected. And so we turned around and everybody moved to the other side of the ship. And we saw that eclipse 1 degree above the horizon, a solid layer of cloud. So it just peered out from behind this tiny little gap on the horizon. What a beautiful eclipse. Just fantastic.
Glad
to see an eclipse
somebody who saw
that
it.
low down.
Man, that's awesome. That is awesome because there were 11. I think that they said that it was like a 10% chance you would see totality on that, and 11 ships looked out, and you were the only one that saw it. So that was
We were quite a long way away from everybody else. So to see an eclipse that low down, we had to be very close to the edge of the track, and we were up near the Falkland Islands where everybody else was closer to the Antarctic coast. And some of them were pretty close. There were big holes in the cloud. They just weren't quite in the right place.
I know.
We had sea fog rose up because we were like 10 minutes before totality, 15 minutes. We had broken clouds, but it looked like we were in good shape. And then everything just turned gray. And we were
Yeah.
probably halfway between Antarctica. We went out towards South Georgia Island, and we're way out in the middle of the ocean. You see,
there's a front in the ocean in there, which divides the warmer water in the north, colder water in the south. And right along that front line is where the fog forms, pretty heavy fog. So you may have been close to that. It's simply because the air from the warm side flows over top of the cold air side. And there's quite a difference in the water temperatures, and it just turns into fog. I know we sailed through it, and then once we got to the warm water side, it's completely disappeared. So you may have just been caught on that, little nuance. And
we tried. We were zigging, zagging, and going all over the place every day. New update, new direction, new update, new heading. We tried, but and then there was the bucket of champagne at the bar. I remember this vividly. Like the bottles of unpopped champagne sitting there waiting, and everybody was, nobody was in the mood.
Well, we grabbed a couple of bottles and went back to the room. We grabbed a couple of bottles and went back to the room and commiserated with some of the other eclipse chasers.
It got dark. It got darker than it did.
Oh my God! The video I have of that one, it looks like somebody threw a blanket over the camera. It looked like somebody threw a blanket over it. Got totally dark.
Time-lapse videos of the shadow coming in are really quite interesting. And the funny thing is you look for the shadow coming toward you when you're underneath the eclipse track, and you don't really see it. It's really just a wall of darkness that comes over you. There's no sharp edge or anything like that. But if you take a wide-angle video and you play it back, especially if you increase the speed a bit, you see there is a shadow. You can see that sort of pencil-like darkening in the sky, and sometimes pretty wide, and the sun moves across it as it from first or second contact to third contact. And I have videos of that happening. And in the middle of the video, I say, "Where's the shadow?" Because I couldn't see it by eye.
Yeah.
Once the video, I thought, "Oh, sure, there it is." It wasn't obvious. It was subtle, but it was there, noticeable, but just couldn't see it. I mean, you look around you and you see the bright sky over there and the bright sky over there. You're actually seeing the edge of the shadow, but you don't think of it like that. You think, oh, I'm in this all around sunset horizon here. So take a wide angle video if you can. A cell phone will work just fine with it. And keep it pointed toward the sun, and you just might find out that the shadow is quite spectacular in the video.
I actually did that for 2010. I just stuck a camera in the ground, went and watched the eclipse and stuck it on video, and then came out with this. I had this beautiful, you see the shadow just kind of coming in like this as it goes over the eclipse. It was just beautiful. You just see just the shadow coming on the eclipse and then moving off. It was beautiful when you could see the shadow like that. And with the 4K video cameras now too, you can pull pictures off of that too. I still have high quality prints. That's one of the things I really like about the changes in technology that we've gone through. And the fact that travel is somewhat a little bit easier than it used to be. I mean, the first total solar eclipse I saw on Antarctica, we had a choice of a 30-day cruise on a Russian icebreaker back in 2003, or the flight. I picked the flight, but 2021, the next Saros, right? The next 18-year Saros, there were 18 ships and like 3 or 4 flights, with one landing and on the ice in Antarctica. So the whole travel with the popularity of eclipse has changed for a lot of people.
Yeah, I keep wondering what the next big thing is going to be, or Used to be storm chasing, and that was unique. And you pull your storm chase vehicle up in front of a McDonald's, and the people that were working there would come over and say, "Are you guys storm chasers?" Nowadays, you go in, they sell more of those bloody storm chasers. They never stick around. They grab something and they run away right away. And the eclipse chasing used to be pretty unique. And back in '79, even though it went over North America, but then you started to get places like New Guinea and Indonesia and that where people didn't travel to that often. And how, well, after going over North America twice in the last decade, or just over, you suddenly realize that there's a few tens or hundreds of millions of people and they've seen an eclipse.
Yeah.
You ain't so special anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's next.
Tell us a little bit. You're not the first storm chasing eclipse chaser I've ever met. So apparently it's like a secondary hobby for a lot of us. And I know it's on my bucket list. So tell us just a little bit about the storm chasing.
Well, I teach storm chasing at the local university here,
Oh.
the University of Manitoba. And I've been doing that with a bunch of other fellows from the local weather office and in the university. So you kind of get immersed in it, and you take the students storm chasing for a week or 8-9 days after the course is over. So they get to put into practice what they're taught in the classroom. And we almost always get the best reports going back to the university. Best course I ever had, particularly if we find a couple of tornadoes. I think the last time there were 6 of them or something like that.
Ooh, wow.
So it's, but storm chasing is a battle with Mother Nature where you start out in the morning by gathering all that information you can. A lot of it is model information, but we try to work with real information for as long as we can. And once you sort of analyze these models, which you would have done by 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, most tornadoes, thunderstorms will start up at 4 in the afternoon. So in my case, it usually means I have 4 to 5 hours to grab my passport and get over the border into North or South Dakota. I can make it to South Dakota for a storm chase if I get away early before the storms kick off. But normally, if I'm going any farther than North Dakota into Nebraska or Oklahoma, I have to plan on several days.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where you say to your wife, "Well, I'm going storm chasing." And if she doesn't say, "Can I come?" then I say, "Well, we might come home tonight, but we might stay a week." It depends on what it looks like when we get there.
Yeah.
And so that's the way it works. But it's an intellectual battle to do it. And it's not so much seeing the tornado, because usually you're surrounded by hundreds of others. And if you want to find a tornado, all you do is turn on your cell phone and see where everybody else is going and just go to the same place. Because the collective intellect will find you where the most severe storms are. The challenge is to find one that nobody else is going to. And there's a bonus if you don't see a tornado, because the storms themselves are beautiful.
Beautiful. They're beautiful.
And spectacular photography alone.
I love watching a storm come in on the horizon. I used to live on a farm near Corsicana, Texas. And I just loved watching just the storms come in over the horizon. They're just beautiful and majestic with the lightning and everything else. And I would actually wait till the last minute. I wouldn't even be in the house. I would go to the barn. We had a barn. And I just loved watching it from the barn coming in and then just sitting in the barn and listening to the fury of it going on top of the tin roof and everything else. They're beautiful in their own right. They are just beautiful in their own right.
Well, they have their tragic sides too, which eclipses don't, other than being clouded out, or usually be mollified with 2 Coronas afterwards, and or maybe your bottle of champagne,
Yeah.
and everybody's in the same bucket. So you kind of hold each other's hands and promise you'll see them again at the next one.
Next one. Yeah.
We got a
Yeah.
net
Here in North
here.
America, we have quite a ways to go before we see our next one in North America. The Australians are getting them all right now.
No.
And
I
it's
need to
pretty
retire
nice place.
there. I need to retire to Australia so I can be there and not have to travel.
I've already booked a 4-wheel drive camper for the 28 eclipse in Australia. Most outfits won't do it, but we found one that would, and so we're all set to go, and we're going to be doing our old thing, camping in the outback and photographing the stars and watching an eclipse.
So would you send me the link? Because that's my plan for 28 also. I plan to do the whole camper in the Northwest.
Yeah, Vid sent you to, well, you can camp. There's a lot of rules about renting cars in Australia. You have to get a company that will let you go off-road, because a lot of them won't. And in fact, one of the roads we plan to take, which I've been down partly, the word I'm getting is, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go down there at all. So anyway, it's fun. I've done it twice already, and spectacular skies at night in the Australian outback. So
That's what I'm looking
and the
forward to
Australians,
doing.
the Aussies are easy to deal with. They're certainly a very happy-go-lucky lot.
That's
got
what
a
I planned on doing.
If you're going to do 4-wheel drive stuff, you probably pick a vehicle up in Darwin or the bigger cities. Alice usually has some places that'll have a vehicle or two. Most of them just won't make a reservation this far out, but I have the advantage of having friends in Adelaide who can approach the dealers for me, and they're coming along, so there's more than one vehicle involved in this. So, what's surprising to me is they quoted the price, because I would normally expect that, yeah, you have a reservation, we'll let you know what the price is later. So we'll see how that works. But Australia has a disadvantage of being wide open with beautiful weather and no place to stay.
Yes.
But the Australians are also very quick to realize a market when the market is available. And so you will find that there'll be many places starting to advertise that they're going to have a encampment, and they'll have all the necessary facilities brought in and things like that. Even bringing water into some parts of Australia is kind of a big endeavor, so it takes a lot of planning to do it. They've got several coming, and they've done it before, so they know what it entails.
Chris, you were going to say something? Ask something?
Oh, just that we have a mess going on down here in Texas right now with this.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Expecting 20 inches.
We are lucky.
Had a tornado outside of San Antonio this morning.
Too much water or too much heat, it seems to be the rule these days. In a way, I'm not too unhappy being at 50 degrees north, because we've had our hot days, but we've also had some good rains, in fact, flooding rains in a few places. So nobody's too dried out, and I guess it's mostly the flood peaks are passing right now, so some of the bigger cities have escaped. I live in a city that back in 1950 dug a ditch around the city to divert river water, so we don't flood anymore. It just goes around us and about 100 kilometers and dumps it into the lake. So $1 billion well spent.
What's your favorite eclipse weather miracle? Do you have one where it was like something completely
Yeah.
unexpected?
Pure blind luck in China back in
2009.
yeah, that sounds about right. We were in a spot and the weather's forecast didn't look good, so I moved us out of it. And day before the eclipse, I jumped in a car with a couple of guides and we went driving 200 kilometers away from where we were going to go and found a truck stop. You know, truck stop in North America has got a store with fast food in it and a bunch of other sort of trucker type things for sale. But in China, a truck stop can be pretty darn big. So it had a restaurant in it and things like that. And we had 9 busloads of people. So I said, okay, this is a bit chancy, but we'll go to it. So the next day we abandoned our plans and we drove down to this place and we pulled in. And in due course, a couple other busloads, I think of Norwegians, came by and they pulled in with us. And then the police arrived and they said, well, you got to get out of here. You can't stop here. We don't want all the, I don't know why. They're being police. But we also had a television reporter from the Shanghai News Channel. And she started to interview the police officer in charge. And all of a sudden, everything was just fine. But we didn't go far enough. It went overcast and then it started to rain. And everybody put tarps over top of their telescopes and raincoats. And they all rushed into the restaurant and sort of took shelter. And darn if it wasn't 5 minutes before totality, it broke open. And we saw totality. It was a long one. It was a 5.5 minute one. In the middle of it, it clouded over again, and then it cleared again. And it was through cloud, and it was fuzzy, but we saw it. And then it started to rain again, and it rained buckets all the way back to where we So that was the hand of God, as Maradona would say, that came out and parted the clouds for us, and we just got
Maradona.
lucky. Well, there you go. Take them along with you to Spain. It just might work for you.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
Well, that's great. This has been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great story. I think we can end there.
Yeah.
well, good luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
We're going to be watching everybody's weather, even though I'll be, I wouldn't say stuck on a cruise boat, but enjoying a cruise boat in Greenland. Possibly the only thing for me is that where everybody else is taking shorts and t-shirts, I'm going to be taking a light parka and some heavy boots where I'm going. And I don't really need that in August because I get enough of it in January.
That's great. Well, good luck. Clear skies to you. And you'll be
all of us.
mobile. You'll be nice and mobile. So, yeah.
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 You'll be like this with
Good.
the captain. You're in good shape.
I will. It's probably going to be clear. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. There you go. That's the attitude. All this
That's the
cloud.
way. Be clear.
Yeah.
To be clear across the whole path. There we go. Clear
Yeah.
across the whole path.
Well, that's it for this episode of Totality Talks. Hope you enjoyed our chat with Jay. In the next episode, we have astronomer and eclipse guide from AstroTrails UK, Nick James. As always, clear skies.